Here again, we have a couple gods main here, but then again, he's got Prognostic Sphinx. What a sweet card that is. You know, I really liked it when they spoiled that card, but the problem with that I had with it was that it taps itself when it gets hexproof, and that's rough. Like against the aggressive decks, you want to be able to have it as a blocker and hold back, and the fact that they could just target it with a removal spell, and then you're forced to tap it, kind of gives it the weakness. But hey, let's see if it works out for him. I mean, I hope it does.
Prognostic Sphinx is so good that I had one at the pre-release, Shaheen. I put it on the table, I attacked with it, my opponent looks at me, and he says, "Are you going to scry?" I was like, what? It has scry? And indeed, when it attacks, it has scry 3.
It does have scry 3.
All right, so here we go. Both players starting off with a bunch of lands. Alex Krenik, Hallowed Fountain for the blue-white control, and an island, Jeff Hoogland. Okay, so Alex has started off with a mulligan to 5, so just getting lands down on the table is good for him.
Right, yeah, and this is a kind of an interesting matchup because even though this control mirror, Jeff's got a lot of like aggressive cards that he can get out there. Frostborn Weird is a nearly wrathable by itself creature. You got to get rid of that thing. It can attack for a large chunk of damage here. Also, he has Ashiok, which is going to be a hot topic for us today. I'm not going to absorb this whole match with, an Ashiok rant, but definitely after we're able to chat about that Planeswalker. So here's the said Frostborn Weird, the old 4 power for 2. Not too bad.
We did see earlier Jeff tried to land a Thassa, God of the Sea, and Alex Krenik had to syncopate for it, exiling that. Has to get rid of that thing when it's on the stack. It's almost impossible to deal with once it's on the board.
Right, yeah, and it's definitely, the creature's not the problem. It's that scrying every turn for the rest of the match starting on turn 3, that's got to be pretty good, so good counter there. And it looks like Alex is, with his mulligan, he still has, looks like he has a Revelation and another Syncopate, so he's not looking too bad.
Able to get up to 5 lands now, Alex Krenik, off of the mulligan to 5. Pretty ideal for him.
Yeah, especially with that Revelation, you can bounce right back in this at any point. Revelation has kind of been the hot topic of Standard too. Definitely something where you have the ability to spot removal, 1-for-1, and then refill your hand without the threat of, Nephalia Drown Yard finishing you off. So we have...
Here we go.
Oh, this is nice. Okay, so we have a counter war here over Jace, the Architect of Thought, the Architect, if you will. Obviously, wasn't a secret that this guy's going to be the Planeswalker after rotation. I think he's been good the whole time, but now he pretty much stands alone as the control Planeswalker in all control decks.
So Jeff casts the Jace Architect of Thought. Alex fights back with another Syncopate, but Jeff Hoogland this time has the Is It Charm to counter Syncopate. Jeff Hoogland minuses 1 is his Jace, and then picks up a Dissolve. So he's well set up for next turn. Alex Krenik
we have to
on threats.
Yeah, we have to Revelation main phase here because knowing he has that, your hand, you have nothing. Like if you say go here, you're going to put yourself in a hole that you can't get out of. So Revelation here main phase is a must. And please do it because with the Dissolve in hand and knowing Alex is oh no, see this is going to be a problem here. Now that Revelation is never going to resolve. And Jeff is just going to be in full control of this game.
I believe Alex Krenik may have had another Syncopate in his hand, but Jeff Hoogland has no real need to overcommit to this board. He's got a Frostburn Weird pinging away. Looks like he pumped it that time.
Yep. And again, he's just going to... Alex now is, like we said earlier, is just not going to be able to get this Revelation resolved. And the biggest thing about the control mirror is you have so many kind of mediocre cards. He has Doomblades on one side, you have Charm on the other side, and you need to be able to refill your hand to actually get to your 1 or 2 money spells for the control mirror. So now Jeff doesn't have to do anything, like you said. For the rest of the game, he could just keep messing around with his Jace, attacking him with the Frostborn Weird, and there's just no reason ever to tap out.
Picks up another Frostburn Weird off that Jace activation. So he's drawn 2 extra cards off his Jace, has a Dissolve in hand. Is he going to commit another threat to the board? No, just going to pump again.
And it's funny how such a small, a creature like Frostborn Weird, even though it's not really, no one really knew it was going to be a standard powerhouse. This card is in a lot of decks. It's in the Devotion deck that we've been seeing at the Pro Tour. It's in his Grixis control deck. Pretty much you're playing blue-red. It's a pretty fine option.
Well, with the Devotion mechanic, anything that costs double color now is an advantage, where
Yeah.
it used to be a disadvantage. You wanted to have colorless so
That's
that you
true.
could splash it easier.
Don't you love it when these plans come together? The verdict, I told you, the verdict for the Frostborn Weird, it's pretty much, you got to, it's huge.
Yeah, just a 1-for-1 there.
Yeah.
And as you said, mediocre cards. Azorius Charm, we saw Alex Krenik cycle that rather than put a Frostborn Weird on top of the library. That's how mediocre that card is right here in this matchup.
Yeah. And the good thing is here, Jeff is able to refuel his aggressive board with one more 1/4. All right, so we saw a memory depth drawn, and here's obviously the matchup where memory depth is just absurd. And I think Jace Architect did lose a little bit of its muster with the new Legend rule, because the ability to play it a turn earlier and then have it as defense for any memory depth to come down was insane. And now
doesn't kill opposing
doesn't
Jaces.
kill opposing Jaces. So now you have a memory depth that pretty much the options to remove it are far and few between. You have Detention Sphere from blue-white, and then you have, of course, Hero's Downfall, not to be confused with Hero's Demise, that will deal with it on the other side, the black side.
Yeah, Jeff should have some Heroes Downfalls in his deck list.
I'm sure he does.
No, he's got Dreadbores instead.
Oh,
since he
Dreadbore,
does-
yes,
Since he does
Dreadbore.
have the red and black.
Yeah,
Wants to go for
Dreadbore-
the cheaper answer.
Yeah, Dreadbore's much better, I think. Hero's Downfall is almost bad against aggro decks, even though it says kill target creature on it, just because of the 3 costs, and Dreadbore is definitely better. All right, so we have a Revelation here, which will get countered. And again, if Alex would have Revelation main phase a while ago and got this through, he probably would have been even toe-to-toe for cards in hand with Jeff. Some players I've noticed, and this is not a mistake per se, it's more of I think it's a lack of playing instants on sorcery speed. Some people say that, I want to play my instant on instant speed, and then they have to suffer the consequences. So he's going to be Revelation here for, let's see, this is for 5 here. No, I lied, for 3.
It's for 3,
So
and
it's
then
the
he left
same.
the 2 mana open for the Syncopate, but Jeff Hoogland casts Dissolve, and he's able to pay for the Syncopate.
Yeah, I think he's trying to bait out so you play Jace on his turn. But the problem here is I think it would have been fine otherwise. You could just untap with Jace and then play it with Syncopate open. Same thing.
Scry, put the card on the bottom. Yeah, and Jeff Hoogland has
He
has
could,
the Frostburn Weird.
Yeah,
so
and
he can threaten the Jace.
Yeah, exactly. He could have just untapped, played Jace, and then syncopated his if he had another dissolve, and then that way he would still have a syncopate in his hand instead of wasting it. But he's gonna have to play it and plus it. So you're like you said, the Frostburn Weird doesn't just clock it out here. Oh, Eighth Link. He drew. Well, that's a little bit better of a card to draw there. All right. Well, maybe Alex knew Eighth Link was the next card. He has that future sight here.
So his plan is to just race now at this point.
It's pretty easy to race. Aetherling, we have noticed, and there's the broken Ashiok. Let's see how it does here.
With all those shock lands, Jeff Hoogland is only at 12 life.
2-turn clock. And like I said, I'm not going to control the match here with an Ashiok rant, but we're going to see here, especially later in the game, in the control mirror, how it just has so little in-game impact if it's not turn 3. So we're going to see what it does here. Obviously, against an Aetherling, it's not going to do too much, but luckily Jeff has Doomblade, I think ×2 in his hand, so he has a time to fog a few times against the Aetherling.
So he's just going to take these two lands, right?
Yeah, I think I would too. Just he wants to be able to cast all these spells in his hand.
There you go. That is how little impact Ashiok has in the control matchup here.
Goes right on the bottom of the library. Lands better. Alright, so does he have 3 removal spells in his hand?
He's going to go for the Doomblade.
Oh, he's just going to go for the 2-turn clock on Frostborn Weird. Oh, this is aggressive. I like this play.
Yeah, so he Doomblades to make Alex flicker the Aetherling
this will
away
only
and just cracks for 4.
This will only backfire if Alex has an answer, but we know he does. We know he doesn't. We know he has his Jace in his hand, so. Oh, wow. See,
Another Jace,
this is not going to work out. Because actually, Jeff is going to win this game because he has a Dissolve in his hand, so even if Alex were to draw a removal spell or a counter spell to protect his Aetherling so he could block, he wouldn't be able to do it because of the Dissolve in Jeff's hand. So we're going to see here a Jace, a +1 on the Jace. He's probably going to look for an Azorius Charm, but little does he know that Jeff actually has the Dissolve here anyway. Jace is a monster in the control mirror, but not when you're taking, 16 damage from
You have to have control first.
Yes, yeah. There's no control when there's a powerful 2-drop attacking you. So
Alex Krenik with 2 Jace Memory Depths in hand. He's going to go for the attack first, see if maybe Jeff is going to commit any more resources here.
Yeah.
Before trying to land his Jace. No? Yeah, there he goes.
Yeah, you definitely attack here and just hope that Jeff wastes a removal spell on it so he doesn't take enough to put him into a 1-turn clock here after this. So he's going to pump and bait it. Let's see. Jeff, being the weathered veteran he is probably just going to take it. Knowing there's nothing that
can look on that face, he says, it's not going to kill me. Why do I care?
Yeah. Control players definitely need to use their life total as a resource. That's their best resource because your cards are slower, they're clunkier, they don't fit curves most of the time. So you need to take some damage here and there to make sure that you can, as you said, take control later in the game. So until your life total is 0, control players are not. We ain't scared. You know what I'm saying? All right, so he's going to pump more than once. That's fine.
Committing some more mana to the pump, then he's not going to have.
He's not going to have enough to Zori's Charm here.
Out.
Yeah, so now we're at no outs. But Alex doesn't know that Jeff has another removal spell.
But still, it's very important to play to the outs that you do have.
Right, yeah. Yeah, definitely should have just
regardless of
what
your opponent is doing.
Yeah. Attacking for 4 here would have been best because then you would have enough mana to blink and then memory depth and then hope to hit your... So he's just going to bluff.
Now he's just hoping that Jeff does not have another removal spell to force the Aetherling out of the way.
Right. There's a full bluff on his part because...
Still make him go through the attack and pump.
Yeah, definitely.
Pretend like he had the charm.
Yeah. But Jeff having the dissolve knows that even if you have it, it doesn't matter.
Pump it.
Okay.
Let's move on to game 2.
Okay. So this matchup, I really think it's in Alex's favor when you look at the deck. And he did mulligan to 5, to be fair. But when you have a deck with 4 Jace memory depth in your main deck, that is a heck of an advantage against the other control players. Especially when you're on a normal hand where you're able to kind of interact early and kill a 1/4 for 2. I mean, your deck is blue-white control. You have tons of removal. And the only creature that you have to worry about is a Frostborn Warrior. So very surprising that card did so much damage to him that game. But in the board, it looks like we have a Dispel, 2 negates that are coming in. We have Glare of Heresy, which is not good against Grixis, as we know. No white cards in that deck. We got Ratchet Bomb. I like Ratchet Bomb against control decks too, because if you're afraid of cards like Ashiok, if you're afraid of the Frostborn getting you again, it kills a lot of the earlier stuff, and it's just better than your removal spells that only hit creatures. Because Ratchet Bomb can hit other players or other cards besides creatures.
I have seen Ratchet Bomb go up to 6 and nab an Elspeth's Son's Champion in a control mirror.
Yeah, and I remember doing that back in the day when you just cranking that up to 4 and 5 and hitting big planeswalkers. It's just it's a card that it's a little bit slow, but the control decks have definitely slowed down because now control is crazy now. You actually have to kill your opponent. You have to actually kill them, or you have to minus 10 card them with Jace over and over and over. You can't just sit back with your lands that are uncounterable and mill them out. You actually have to put effort into your wins. So now you have time to Ratchet Bomb. You have time to tap out and resolve spells. You have time to actually play a game of Magic rather than just milling them out with lands.
So Jeff Hoogland in his sideboard has a bunch of 1 and 2 drops looking like mostly against creature matchups, removal spells. But he can bring in 2 Thought Seizes, 2 Slaughter Games. If he's afraid of Jace Memory Adept and or Aetherling,
Sphinx Revelation also.
Fantastic card to bring in here. He's also got 2 Hammer of Perforos, so he can board into a little bit more of an aggressive stance with those.
Yeah, watching how well Frostborn Weird did against him, you got to imagine he's going to bring Hammer in. He's also going to bring in Hero's Downfall as 1 copy of that to add to the... he didn't see any Jace Memory deck. I mean, he's got to assume that this is a deck that plays that card. I would bring it in.
Jace or Elspeth, he should be expecting
He's got
here.
Thought Seize too. There's a lot of things. What I've actually found difficult in the current metagame, especially after playing a lot of online Magic with control decks with Blue, White, Red, and Esper, is that you have too many cards to bring in usually because you can't board out your removal spell because your removal spell hits planeswalkers. You can't board out all your turn and burns when you're playing against black-white because they have Osmodad that'll just clock you if you don't have an answer to it. So you're forced to leave in a lot of removal spells, which makes sideboarding a little bit trickier. So we'll see how they board here. Maybe Alex will be on a full grip here. We can see what he can do here.
And even the sweepers, like Anger of the Gods, you kind of have to leave some in against Elspeth, right? Because Elspeth can spit out 3 tokens.
Yeah, especially, and that's another reason why Ratchet Bomb's pretty good too. It's one of those that when you need it for the creatures, it's there. When you need it for the planeswalkers, it's there. He also has Pithy Needle on his board too, so there's lots of ways you can battle back and forth. So, Essence Scatter is also a card in the sideboard that's not too awful against control decks because it does counter a lot of creatures that are problems for you, like Aetherling. It's a huge problem. And a lot of times I like cards like that. I board in Negate against Red-Green a lot because they have multiple copies of the new Red-Green Planeswalker as well as Domri. And even though I can't counter their creatures, I still want to hold that to force me to say, oh, finally, you played one, now I'll counter, because those are the cards that really get you in the end.
So Shaheen, I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you a complicated rules question that a lot of people have been asking. Can Essence Scatter counter a god?
Yes.
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 At all times?
Yes.
That is correct.
Can it level a creature? No. Like Cloudfin Raptor. It's not a god when it enters the battlefield. I'm glad I knew that one because I'm actually pretty bad with the rules, to be honest. You know, I was a level 1 judge once.
Oh, you're talking about evolving a creature? Yeah. If you have enough devotion, it can.
It can,
But
yes.
very rarely do those decks have enough devotion when they're cast.
Right, yeah. So he did bring in Pithy Needle. We see Alex with it. You know, they kept their 7. So we're going to see a good game here. I found with Blue-White Control, and I'm glad Alex is playing it, I think it's a sweet deck. I just don't like the limitations it has when it comes to widespread answers. You're pretty much banking on 4 Detention Sphere, which he has in his deck, to answer threats. There is literally nothing else that you can do to get rid of these problem things. You don't have the Hero's Downfall. You don't have Dreadbore. You don't have cards in red like Warleader's Helix where you can kill things and gain life. It's pretty much just one-dimensional. Alright, so let's see. We got our bomb here, and he did bring the Rash Bomb like I thought, because it's just better than a lot of the removal spells because it does lots of things.
Jeff Hoogland commits a Frostburn Weird to the board. And this is his 3rd land. And Alex so far has had nothing.
Yeah, look at that. One opportunity right there, huh? So he can't get enough of Revelation. He has 3 Revelation and 1 opportunity. That is some wild stuff. That's wild.
Opportunity,
instead of the 4th Revelation. So he thinks that 1 more card is more important than 3 life or more cards. That's interesting.
Maybe he thinks that $25 in his pocket is more valuable.
Yeah, that's true. I have a lot of readers that tell me, they're like, oh, your deck looks sweet, I want to play blue, white, red. Problem is, I don't want to buy all those cards. And that's fine. I mean, if you ever budget it up, I completely understand. All right, here's Ashiok again. So he's going to give him the Ashiok pile by itself.
Yeah, what do you do here with that?
You leave Ashiok by itself because he already has
Skyland.
Exactly, because he already has a Jace out. Like, you don't care about a second Jace. But then again, like I said, I'm not very afraid of Ashiok. I don't think Alex is either. And Ashiok again will go to the bottom of the library.
Yeah, I don't think I would have divided that pile that way.
Yeah, I think.
Because now Jeff.
Oh, there we go. That's a good reason for it. I don't see an answer right now in Jeff's hand, so this could just be the ball game if you don't draw something immediately. And this is the thing where I want to talk about a little bit later with you, Ricky, is that
there's the slaughter games.
There it is. Is that even though Ashiok's 3 mana, even though it's cheaper than Jace, it will never be Jace. And you're never going to win by milling them 3 over and over and over. Drownyard was so good because you had multiple copies of Drownyard. With Ashiok, you got 1. You have a legendary Drownyard play, and you just got to pray that you can activate it 11 times to beat him, or Jace needs 3 or 4, and the game is over. So we'll see what happens here. He needs to draw an answer.
Most likely Jeff is going to go for another -2 on Jace here, and then just play another Jace and keep digging.
Yeah, he's got to find an answer immediately. And the worst part about it is you got to draw cards to do that. And Jeff, actually, he came to the booth earlier. We had a little chat with him. I told him exactly what would happen here, and it's happening to him right now. I told him that memory depth's going to get you, and you got to have answers for it immediately, because Ashiok and a Jace war is not going to win that war. All right, so he takes the 2 pile, which I probably would take in the 1 pile here, unless I don't have another land, because you just want to have more cards in your library, especially if you don't have an answer to the Jace right now. All right, he needs a Jace before he does this.
So.
Oh, okay. So he's playing the Sphinx.
Well, that's
not
a
bad.
potential answer.
That is. Luckily for Alex, he has a Pithing Needle in his hand, and he has an Azorius Charm, so he has the tools to stop Jace from dying in a couple swings. It's still not going to be good enough here.
The Prognostic Sphinx. There you go. A fabulous beard. Not quite as fabulous as mine, but
yeah, definitely not. Yeah. He looks wise as well. You look very wise with your beard. So
he may be wiser than me.
He is a blue creature. They're pretty wise. Definitely more of the trickery people. All right, so he's looking at Alex here. Alex is just going to go 0-0 here. I wish we knew how many cards were left in Jeff's library, because he's going to get at least 2 more activations out of that Jace, and that might be enough before the Ratchet Bomb dispatches him. Oh, well, what am I talking about? It's Pithing Needle. So you just play Pithing Needle here, you name Ratchet Bomb, and then by the time that Prognostic Sphinx kills Jace, it probably will be too late, but we'll see.
Yeah, this is an important decision tree for Alex Krenik. Has to decide which is more important to stop, the Ratchet Bomb or the Prognostic Sphinx. So he's going to calculate. They're both...
Alex should be asking him how many cards in his library. That's what he's going to do here, I think, because, he's going to mill here. And then he should ask how many cards are left in that library, because if there are 20 cards left in there, or less, then the game is over. As you know, I'm a student and teacher of history, and math and counting is very difficult for me.
Well, we're going to have some problems here then, because I got a degree in history. Math is not my strong suit.
I forgot about the detention sphere.
Jeff Hoogland, magic is his strong suit. He recognizes that he can just crack his Ratchet Bomb to get rid of that detention sphere, get back his Frostburn Weird, and now really put Jace under some pressure.
I'm surprised he didn't play the Pithing Needle in his turn. I mean, he could have played the Pithing Needle naming the Sphinx at least, but what's he? Luckily, I noticed in Alex's land he has a Mutavault, so he can block the Sphinx or block the Frostborn Weird, and if when he goes to pump it, he can actually charm it and then keep the same clock going. Yeah, so you should definitely activate Mutavault here.
All right, gonna scry. It has that ability too, in addition to flying and protecting itself.
25 cards in the library. Okay, so Jeff will be able to survive this. All right, so we have the Mutavault here. Like we said, we're going to block here. We're going to charm it once he puts a little bit of mana into it. Jeff's hand is just full of control stuff. Control things. All right, let's see what happens here. So block. We're going to pump. And then we're going to use an Azorius Charm here.
So +1, -1 to the Frostburn Weird makes it a 2/3. Threatens to kill the Mutavault, but...
Oh, he's just going to discard a card, right? Is he...
Yeah, that's...
Did he...
That's a bit of a surprise. So Alex Krenik goes for Azorius Charm on the Prognostic Sphinx. Forces Jeff Hoogland to discard and give it hexproof, and his Mutavault dies.
Man, that's tough. Maybe he thought, he must have not known about the hexproof ability.
New cards, a lot of text.
Yeah.
I forgot about the scry. Perhaps Alex did not check up on that activated ability. And as we said, he also has the Pithing Needle in hand. He didn't use it to stop the Ratchet Bomb, didn't use it to stop the Sphinx.
Yeah, so now it's almost, that was a pretty deadly 2-for-1, because the discard actually is more like 2 for 0, because the card he discarded is pretty much nothing there. It's a no card, it's a land. So he's going to mill again, and I think Alex is not in the worst shape still, because he does have 4 Jace memory depth. So whenever he draws his next man's Jace memory depth, it should be
close
the
to
ball
lethal.
game. Yeah. All right, so in his hand, I think Alex has He has a revelation. He's got, I think, an opportunity. He's got a lot of expensive cards.
And losing that Mutavault
That's
on that
deadly.
attack. Down a land now, Alex is.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I probably would have plus Jace there just because so he could hit land drops because we know now that Jace, that particular one, is not going to win
finish the job. Yeah, so there was a sequence there where after he blocked with the Mutavault, he could have Azorius Charm the Frostburn Weird, and then he could have, put Pithing Needle on Frostburn Weird and shut that down, and Mutavault would have been able to block it for days.
Yeah, and he also had a Dissolve in his hand too, so he can actually counter on the way back down. So Alex now in a world of hurt.
He's pretty much all in now on his 3 outer, another Jace Memory Adept, but also losing that Mutavault, he's going to have to draw a 5th land in addition to that.
Definitely.
So he needs a sequence here.
I think
he's got a little bit of time.
Yeah, Alex is going to be able to dissolve whatever Jeff does here in order to scry to get a land drop here. But I don't think Jeff really needs to play much else on the board. Because now that the Frostborn Weird is just, not only is Jace dying to the Sphinx, Frostborn Weird is now clocking him as well. So
that's 7 damage there on the board.
Yes. Alright, here comes a Revelation for 1. Necessary.
Oh, look at that. Good old cantrip. Alex can't help but smile at having to do that.
Jace. There's a Jace.
Well, he needs a land, and he needs Jeff to not have a counterspell here.
Right, we need a main phase as Revelation for 1 now. Come on, main phase it for me. Come on, baby. Let's do this. Don't be afraid to cast instants on your turn.
Well, if he's got the Jace, why not go for another Revelation at the end of turn?
Well, if you do a main phase, if you hit an Azorius Guildgate, you lose pretty much. That's the problem. There's too many of these lands nowadays that come in and play tapped, and you got to be able to do it on your turn. And even a shock land is pretty rough to play now that you're facing down all this damage. All right, so he's going to actually ignore that. He's going to go with the Pithing Needle Dissolve plan, which is fine too. Does Jeff have a counterflux in his hand? He does.
Needle that Frostburn Weird and cut down this clock a little bit.
Yeah, I think you definitely don't counter this because I think Jeff's only counterspell is that counterflux. I think he let this resolve. All right, he does.
So now Jeff Hoogland only doing 4 damage a turn. Alex has bought himself some time to find the resources he needs. Boom, attack. You gotta attack Shaheen to win Magic.
I mean, I don't mind tagging. Just start tagging on turn 14, 15. That's when you're supposed to.
You know what turn 14 is for me? Game 3. With the mono red deck.
I used to pride myself in being the fastest Magic player in the room. And when I played Paul Cheon in the Nationals, we had a little feature. The title was the fastest players in the room. We're playing, both of us are pretty control players. And we play so fast. Go, land go. So you play control fast. You just got to tap quickly.
There's that hammer we were talking about.
Hammer time. It's good. And we're going to read this.
Stop to read it. Hammer of Perforos, the legendary enchantment artifact. Got all the types.
Yeah, this is just a disaster for Alex. I don't see any series of cards. Sandpaper 3 is not going to do it. Does he have a Dissolve in his hand too?
Maybe thought so.
Maybe not. Maybe he didn't have it.
Now these legendary enchantment artifacts.
Well, then again, this is actually a good play here in a way, because he's going to try to get Jeff to tap his lands, and he will not, because he does have the memory dip. So he's hoping that he would pay for the syncopate, spike the 5th land, and then play Jace, which is not going to be the case. And it's not.
But a Supreme Verdict.
The Supreme Verdict?
Gonna buy him.
Does he have a Supreme Verdict? I don't see one.
I thought so.
I think that's another Sphinx of Revelation.
Okay.
Yeah. I wish he had Supreme Verdict. It'd be a nice little extension of this game here. But Jeff continuing to crash in. Scrying 3 every attack isn't bad, right?
Now, is that as good as drawing a card? People talk a lot about what is the value of Scry. And someone mentioned it was like 0.3 cards. For each,
I've heard a lot of numbers. I've heard 0.3. I've heard half. I don't think so. I think it's good. I mean, I think it's a different level. I think it's apples and oranges. I think drawing cards for anyone is just better in general, and I don't think you really compare it. Even like a Scry 8, I don't know how many cards that equal it out to, but I know that if I were to build a card and that Sphinx said whenever it attacks, draw a card, I think I'd rather have it draw a card every time it attacks. I'd rather it be a thieving magpie.
So Jeff Hoogland with 11 cards in his library. We are pretty much down to the Jace game here.
And the thing is, Jeff's been able to manipulate his library to put counterspells on top, so now the Jace that he's been holding and hoping to spike probably has just no shot of resolving here.
Right, and Hoogland wisely has not taken any of the bait to fight over spells on his turn, leaving counter magic up. Alex is going to go for it. Jeff has been holding this counterflux this whole time, says no. Alex still has some time. So we see the patience of Jeff Hoogland paying off. He did not fight over the Hammer of Perforos a few turns ago when he could have. He could have paid for the Syncopate. Chose to leave his counter magic up. And now attacks for 4 again. Very patient, very methodical. Knows what his path to victory is, and knows, more importantly, what a potential path to defeat is.
Right. This game would have been a lot different if the charm went on that Frostborn Weird. I think that was a critical point in the game. And here's the power of Ashiok. I'll mill you 3. Take that. Drown yard you. Ashiok. Too good. For those who can't see my face, that was sarcasm, just to let you know.
I can see your face, and I still can't tell.
All right, Alex. You're in trouble. Did you draw another Jace? We did not. It looks like... What is this? Is that a...
It's like a Heliod.
Heliod, yeah. These are sweet cards. I mean, and Jeff's... Again, it's a rough sideboard, like I mentioned earlier, right? When you have Frostborn Weird in your deck, do you take out all your removal? I mean, you can't. Then you get beat by a Frostborn Weird. But then again, drawing Supreme Verdicts are awful if they don't have the Frostborn Weird draw. So it's one of those things where you got to leave it 1 Verdict here and 1 of these and 2 Charm. It gets pretty tricky. All right, so he's going to try to have an opportunity. I think he's going to opportunity...
Now, if you only have 1 counterspell, you let this resolve.
No, I think
right?
he's targeting Jeff with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he's targeting Jeff. Opportunities, there we go. That's why another sweet part of this card.
Just trying to draw Jeff out, but he's...
Yeah, he's a charming. I think he had like 8 cards on the library, so it would have to be like back to back. Oh, it was himself. Okay. But it's cool to
That
note.
would have been a nice play, though.
Right, it's cool to note that
if it
opportunity
didn't
does
matter.
that, yeah. It's one of those few draw spells that makes them draw cards as well. Sign and Blood's another one.
I remember the good old days of Deep Analysis targeting you to finish people
Oh, yeah,
off.
yeah. Back in the...
That's it.
So blue-white control falls to Grixis, and this is one of the key weaknesses of blue-white, I think, is just that 3rd color missing. Now, the punishment for playing a 3rd color is having lands that come and play tapped and lands that shock you, right? That doesn't matter in the control mirror. All your lands come and play tapped? Sure. Take 2 damage from them? Why not? It doesn't matter. But here, you have a situation where you get no penalty from playing a 3rd color in this matchup, and then you have them reap the benefits. You have Ashiok from black if you're all about that card. You have, of course, Dreadbore and then Hero's Downfall. You have a lot of ways to deal with those Planeswalkers on the other side, and Alex simply has a detention sphere, and that's it. And that's tough.